Okay, well, welcome in everyone to a special episode of the Narrative Dissonance podcast. Special for a few reasons. First of all, at the moment we do not have Phoenix, so I'm going solo until he shows up. I'm not actually sure where he's at. Last time is in one other instance in which he wasn't around. Hold on, where's This is not working. Okay, so there's been there we go, I found it. There's been one other instance in which Phoenix was not around, and in actuality he was around. He was just distracted and lost track of time. In this case, it is I'm not showing him online at all, so I don't know where he is or what is going on. Haven't talked to him at all today. So, we'll just have to go on without him until he shows up. In the meantime, just a moment. Let's switch ourselves over here. I'll keep the desktop audio down just in case he gets a call. And let's see. Facecam? No, let's not worry about Facecam. Let's switch over to here. Might need to turn on the I don't even know what we have for this. Okay, hold on. First things first. Let's get my face up here. Okay, and let's alter that because for some reason this stinking camera will keep... Nope, wrong one. This stinking camera keeps resetting the brightness to maximum. Not maximum, but to middle, actually, and that's way too high for this room. Okay, so I don't know what to do. I'm used to having someone to bounce off of here. I also don't know if Phoenix is about to show up in the next couple minutes or if he's just going to be out for most of this, so we'll just have to wait and see. Let me pull up real quick. What's this music? What is this music? I don't actually know. Whoa, hello. That's not good. You know what? I don't actually know if I want to keep this or not. Let me just do a quick audio check. Yeah, you know what? That's fine with me. That is fine. Hello, kitten. You're looking very energetic today. He has an itchy chin. Okay. Okay, now I'm even more confused because it's showing Phoenix in chat, but he's not responding. Well, whatever. He'll be around eventually. So, yeah, so we're doing a breakdown for this episode, or I'm doing a breakdown, and if he doesn't show up, of our most recent Pathfinder session, which, I have... You're very, very busy today, Kat. I have a rough plan going into every session, more or less what's going to happen, but of course the party always finds a way to muck up my plans, which is fine. I don't actually have an issue with that. I actually kind of enjoy it. When growing up, I used to want to be an author, but I could never really get to the end of my books because I found myself getting bored just because, I know how it's going to end. It's just a matter of writing it out, and it's a bit tedious. So I never really got to the endings, but having that sort of social dynamic where things are, okay, that's bright. Having that kind of social angle where things change based on the actions of, I'm just going to have to keep it over here, I guess. Based on the actions of the party members keeps the whole session much more interesting and keeps me guessing and having to rethink my plans. So I find it really, really energizing because it forces me to continue being creative. I can continue coming up with new content all the way up to the very end. That's really the thing I like. I like making the new content, not necessarily writing out and doing the stuff I'd done previously. So I had a plan. The party more or less kept with that plan. So first, a little bit of background. Let's kind of lay this out. We've talked about in some previous episodes of this. I just want to give a basic groundwork for this. This is an original world that I made myself. It's not based on the Galarian Pathfinder stuff, though I did take some stuff from their Galarian world. The party is currently traveling in elven lands. Now, the elves are different in my version. My elves are different. But specifically, they're different because they are... So all elves in my world are connected magically to nature. They draw their power from nature. And I need to move this because this is not readable. Can you see it right there? That looks good enough. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So they're magically linked to nature, but obviously there's different kinds of nature. There's different types of life in nature. There's different kinds of things that you could be connected to. So the elves are actually divided into 5 different subgroups depending on what specifically they're linked to. The wood elves, obviously, they're connected to plants, forests, all that sort of stuff. They tend to be the ones to build the largest cities, the ones who have the most developed infrastructure, and I wouldn't say developed culture, but in terms of their interactivity with other groups, they have a lot more. I say a lot more cultures is probably the best term, because each city can kind of have its own subculture, whereas other groups tend to have a widespread culture that covers their entire I guess sub race, if you want to call it that. And the wood elves are the ones they've been interacting with the most. There's the gray elves that are connected to avians and basically aerial creatures, birds mostly, but others as well. I mean, theoretically, there's dinosaurs. You can be connected to pterodactyls. But they live up in the mountains. And they also build cities, but they tend to be much more isolated and isolationist. They're not necessarily xenophobic. They just prefer their privacy. There's the wild elves that are connected to the land animals. Some of them are sort of the loners. Some of them operate in groups, kind of traveling around. And again, I patterned all of this off of actual living creatures. So think of the wood elf cities as being like artificial forests. Think of the sky elf or gray elf cities as being like nests, up in the mountains. These guys, you have pack animals that are like the zebra or the wildebeest or something else in the Lion King, and they're patterned after those, so they tend to be nomadic, traveling around. And then there is the blue elves or the aquatic elves who live in the water. Again, think of schools of fish traveling around. They're very mercantile. They don't have a lot of settlements. They tend to travel much more from place to place, and interact with or live in other people's cities. And those are the 4 standard nature variants. Now there is a 5th one, and these are the dark elves. The dark elves are not linked to nature. They are linked to magic, but they are not linked to nature. They draw their power from some other source. And they all have, I use the term drow. I know that's technically copyright, Wizards of the Coast, blah blah, copyright, I don't care. But their appearances can vary wildly depending on where they draw their power from. Now, because of their disconnect from nature and the fact that elves who tend to dive into dark magic, say things connected to demons and devils, if they draw power from demons, they become drow. But that isn't the only way, but it has become a stigma that drow tend to be demon worshippers, evil by default. Not actually the case. In my world, and in this particular part of my world, there is a settlement of drow living on the borders of a place called the Deepwood. The Deepwood was a forest that was corrupted by extraplanar, weird, Lovecraftian magic, basically, Cthulhu magic. And this created a problem for the normal elves because their connection with nature made them especially susceptible whenever they were traveling in the Deepwood. One group of these elves severed their link to nature. They drew from elemental sources predominantly. There's a few other sources, but mostly elemental sources, fire, earth, etc. And they continued the fight for several hundred years. They're not immune to the corruption, but they are much more resistant to it, and they're not actually evil. They're really their culture is very similar to the Wood Elf culture that they started from, because that's, that is where they were descended from. That's where their culture was built, and they haven't had a chance to build a new culture other than just fighting for survival. The party discovered these drow. This was in a previous session. Again, I'm still laying the groundwork, but we're just about done. So they discovered these drow previously. They got some help, and ultimately the drow and elves, they were able to convince them to work together to reclaim a city that was lost in the center of the Deepwood, or the northern half of the Deepwood specifically. And they actually destroyed the source of the corruption, but only in the northern half. There's another source of corruption in the south that's still there. So, the operation was between the Elven and Drow militaries. Most of the civilians still don't know about the Drow existence, and this is where the political tensions start to set in, and this is where the party has tried to figure out what they're going to do. They want to form an alliance between this group of Drow, who were former Wood Elves, and the Wood Elves of the North, and potentially get them back to working together again, but there's a lot of distrust they have to work through in order to get there. So this session, the party's goals, they spent the last few sessions doing research in an old library where they found records that had been buried for about 600 years, and they were able to learn a lot that they didn't know previously. They were finishing up the last of their research in that library, and they were going to go to the Drowlands and help them with this alliance. But there's a problem with this alliance. Living in a cave at the bottom of the Drow city, which is underground, under a mountain. And this mountain is right on the border of the Deepwood. In this cave, there is in fact a demon. A very powerful one. More or less a demon prince, though no one's actually confirmed that absolutely. They just know roughly its CR power level is somewhere around 18 to 20. It's very, very strong. And on top of that, it's a custom character made by me, so it's not just a monster, it also has class levels. Now, this demon appeared 300 to 400 years ago and offered its assistance to the Drow in fighting the Deepwood. Its explanation was it hates the creatures and the eldritch horrors in there as much as any living people do. So, its goal is not so much, to help them as it is to get them to be more effective at killing the other thing that it hates. And it claims to be indifferent, more or less, to mortals, elves, humans, and what their plights are. It only really wants to help because it's getting them to do its dirty work for it. That's what it says. What are his actual goals? Who knows? It's a demon. It could easily be lying. But having it there definitely doesn't help the Drow and their overall social and political appearance to the elves, who are going to look at that and say, yeah, you say you're not evil. Why do you have a demon in your city? Why are you accepting help from it? And according to their records, its help has been very, very useful. It's very knowledgeable about the things in the Deepwood. It's been giving lots of information about how to kill it, and they've made a lot of progress because of it. Progress that ultimately got them to the point where the party was able to do their attack and lead these different armies together to retake that city. So a lot of thanks could be attributed to this creature. But now they have to figure out what they are going to do about it and do with it, since they've been discovered by the elves, and it's kind of a political liability. So that's the backdrop. So, session proper. And I actually have my session thing listed. Kind of bright, but sorry. Okay, a few little things. Estiva, who's the party's investigator, got a magic crystal for an item she has. That's fine. Okay, so the first thing the party did was they spoke to a man named Velrud. Velrud is a former general, high-ranking member of the High Elven Court, High Elven Wood Elves specifically, but it's the highest-ranking nobility. He is currently the head of the High Court of the Elves. This is meant to be temporary. He was positioned there because currently there's a war going on, and he's the foremost expert on this particular issue. There's a whole thing about the war that was like the main thing the party was focused on for a while, and it's going to be coming back to the forefront, but right now they're focused on the Deepwood. So they went and they talked to him. He came to this city after it was retaken, and he's basically leading the military operation directly from the front lines. Like, he's not out there fighting the monsters, but he is in the command base, and They're rebuilding the city, or they started to rebuild the city, rebuilding fortifications, gathering their forces, doing scouting, because the southern Deepwood is still a threat, and they know that eventually they're going to have to deal with it. They also received a warning that now that the northern Deepwood is gone, what they didn't realize was the monsters in the north and south had been fighting each other. And without the north there, the south can potentially just let loose, and they might have even more of a threat than they had previously. So that's fantastic. Of course, I'm saying this. I'm the GM. I had this planned all along, but so they went. They talked to him, and they were asking him whether or not he would be open to the idea of an alliance. And his initial statement was, "Well, I saw them work with us. We fought together side by side to reclaim the city. I'm actually open to it, based on everything that I've heard and everything I've learned from you guys. If they are indeed former Wood Elves, and they want to rejoin us, there's no reason not to accept their help, especially since we need all the forces we can get to fight this eldritch threat." The problem was he had offered them an opportunity to come to the surface. He basically offered them most of the city named Ajendal, which is the city they reclaimed. He offered them residence in that city, said, we'll clear out the houses, and basically you and your people can come out from the underground and you can live here on the surface with us in this city. And they outright refused. The guy he talked to said, nope, not a chance, and basically walked away. He refused to have any conversation about it. So Velrud told the party, if you want to make this happen, you're going to have to convince the rest of the High Court of the High Elves, but you're also going to have to convince the Drow, because they're not apparently open for negotiations, and I don't know why. Now, he didn't know about the demon in the basement. The party did, so they didn't tell him about that, but they said, okay, well, we'll go have a chat with them. We'll see what we can do about that. They also talked to him about some plans for dealing with the southern Deepwood threat. Not really relevant here because that's sort of a work in progress, narratively speaking. They're still kind of getting all their stuff in order to plan for that. So the party said, okay, we'll talk with them. First we have to do one last little bit of research in the library. And I don't know if I want to hold off on explaining this. I hope Phoenix shows up soon, but so the party did one more thing. They went to the library and they investigated. They're investigating a group called the Black Iris. The Black Iris is a group that they're a strange, almost cult-like group that attacked one of the party members. Superficially, what the party learned about them is that they are fanatics who are dedicated to trying to eliminate extraplanar threats. Specifically, not just extraplanar like demons and devils, but more specifically, it's these kinds of eldritch horror threats. And one of the party members was specifically targeted by them. And they claim that she is a servant of, I don't remember the exact wording I used, but basically some kind of eldritch monster or eldritch god. She doesn't know who her patron is. She knows she's getting power from someone, and she's seen some odd visions. She saw a vision of a place where her patron is currently sleeping at the bottom of an emerald-colored lake. She saw a humanoid silhouette of somebody sleeping at the bottom of the lake, and she knows it to be her patron, but she doesn't know who her patron is, where he comes from, if it is a he or a she. She doesn't know anything about it. It's just, it's there, and it's asleep, and she needs to find a way to wake it up. At least that's her mission. And that is because of motivations leading to more stuff against the Deepwood and the one who's ultimately behind it all. But they attacked her, and so the party did some investigating, and they're like, okay, we don't know exactly who these guys are, but apparently they've been around for a while. This cult has changed its name a bunch of times, but it's currently known as the Black Iris, but it used to be known by a bunch of other names. The oldest of these names was the Children of the Spheres. And actually, no, I think it's the Children of the Sphere. Yes. So, they did some research into these guys and said, okay, what can we find out about them from 600 years ago? What records have been lost? And here's what they located. Again, sorry for the brightness, but this is as dim as I can get it. If I knew how to switch this thing to night mode, I would. But I'm not sure if that's possible. I'm using a Google Doc for this. Anyway. No, this is Children of the Spheres. Okay, I guess we're going to that then. So, their origins of this particular group are, ages ago, there was a war between a very powerful individual the parties learned about named the Archon, who once supposedly ruled an empire that spanned the entire world. And before that empire, he was at war with beings of the Dark Tapestry. And again, Dark Tapestry is essentially Lovecraftian Cthulhu monsters. It's the same people that they are currently fighting. But his war spanned entire worlds and entire planes of existence. And he fought against some creatures known as the World Eaters. That they have very little description on what they are. It was difficult to even describe what they were because they were so alien to what people knew. And eventually they also fought a war against someone named the Fallen, who it's not super clear who that was. The party suspects that it might have been someone who was on the Archon's side who ended up becoming corrupted and turned evil, but still unclear. After that war ended, his army, which had previously been dedicated to fighting off these monsters, was no longer needed in bulk, but in order to defend against further incursions from the Dark Tapestry, he broke them up and essentially broke them down into smaller, almost like special forces task groups to travel around, search for signs of incursions, and locate anything that might try to, slip through from the other side and to eliminate it before it could become a real threat. Well, over time, this became less and less necessary because they started developing other tools and other weapons that they could use to fight off enemies. They developed specialized golems, which are basically death robots designed to fight the Dark Tapestry. They developed special gateways that were able to somehow, it's not clear to the party how, but the portals were able to help them defend against the Dark Tapestry in other ways. You'd think that a portal would be the way that they would gain access, but evidently not. So these special forces groups fell more and more out of practice. They weren't needed as much anymore. And eventually they were disbanded entirely. Now, a splinter faction of that group, I say splinter faction, I don't mean to say this in a negative light. At the time, they weren't negative. Essentially, a group of these people said, we understand that we officially aren't needed anymore, but we aren't willing to give up our charge. We're going to continue doing what we do and searching for signs of corruption, but without as much of a risk, at least, of an external invasion, and with more means of detecting those invasions. They turned their attention to hunting down scholars and spellcasters who might try to summon these things. So that was when the Children of the Spheres were founded. And the spheres are referring to what they call the inner spheres, where essentially the inner spheres are, very simply put, all the inner planes. The prime material plane, the elemental planes, every plane, whether it's humans, demons, angels, elementals, everything that's known as normal reality falls within the inner spheres. It's the universe as we know it. The outer spheres are where the Eldritch Horrors come from, and there's another place known as the middle spheres, which are sort of a weird, dream space place. It's more of an abstract space, kind of between normal reality and imagination almost. So the inner spheres are all of reality as they know it. So that's basically their term for the universe and everything that they consider normal. They were founded, and they were actually a highly respected group early on. Everyone trusted them, they knew where they had come from, and usually if they went after someone, it was a very good reason. Nobody had to doubt that, if these guys say that this person is corrupt and they're dealing with Eldritch Horrors, that they're definitely corrupt. The problem is, time passed. Hundreds of years passed. The original leaders eventually retired and passed away. Their successors took over, then their successors took over, then their successors took over, and eventually the group began to drift more and more away from their original cause. They became more fanatical, they became more cult-like, and it led them to become more, violent and indiscriminate in their killings. They were willing to go after people and try to kill them, even if they were not... Even if they were only suspected of doing wrong, they would target and eliminate them anyway. Also, Phoenix is here. Yay, I don't have to do this alone. Oh, I thought I'd been abandoned. So that was the background on the Black Iris. That's more or less all the information they learned. Why? Okay, this annoys me. For some reason... Hi, Phoenix. I can't hear you, by the way, if you're talking. Okay. For some reason, I did not hear the sound of your call. Why did Discord not alert me that you were calling? Like, I clicked over and I saw it, but I didn't hear it. I don't know. Okay, hold on a second. Hold on. You are still invisible and muted. So you said you basically blacked out. Hold on a second. What? Oh, no. Is that... Nope, that's not what I want. We good? Okay, we're good. And unmuted. So are you going to be okay? Because apparently you're super tired right now.
I'll be alright. I'm alive.
Okay. I will inform you, I'm doing a hard cutoff at the 2-hour mark because apparently I have a Zoom call I have to be in later. Completely unrelated, but that's later on this evening, and I need to make sure I'm ready for that. So we'll be cutting off hard at the 2-hour mark, which might be good for you if you're so tired.
Yeah, I haven't been getting a lot of sleep, but it happens. So.
Well, so I did a breakdown of the kind of the background of this, the elves, the drow, their political situation, the Deepwood, and I've just been kind of doing this opening intro, and I just actually got to the end of the explanation of the Black Iris. The only thing left is that the party located a list of beings that were part of something that was called the Dark Pantheon. Now, several people suspected previously that Hazel, who is the witch in the party, she serves the patron she doesn't know. It's believed by the Black Iris that her patron is some kind of eldritch monster. And the party suspected for a while that her patron was from something called the Dark Pantheon, which was a list of these eldritch beings. Not Dark Tapestry. They're not all specifically evil, but they are very weird and out there. And I don't know. Do you think I should go through the list real quick, or should I just summarize? Phoenix.
I think you should go through the list. I mean, we've already narrowed down which ones it might have been, but at the same time, you gave us a hint that,
Yeah, so...
there's more of them out there, so...
Well, yeah, there are more out there, and also Hazel, when she read through this list, she's been getting a weird sort of, what do you even call those? Just kind of,
Visions.
Well, some are visions, but some are just like sort of a sixth sense feeling of like, there's something wrong about this thing. Like, she got a list of names on another time, and she's like, something's wrong with that list, and I don't know what. There's names that either shouldn't be on there, or there's names that are missing, something like that. And when they read through this list, she just got the sense that was like, that none of those are my patron. She doesn't know specifically. She just got that feeling that none of these, the listed ones here, are her patron. But I'll do a quick run through of them. And so I'm going to give you the names. These are actually more like titles. They don't know if these guys have actual names. And
they probably do have actual names, but they're because they're eldritch in nature, we won't understand the first thing that comes to their names. Not even the names themselves.
I mean, possibly.
It's just the concept of their names will drive us insane.
But it's also possible they come from planes where they don't have names, where they don't use those kinds of things as identifiers. But at least not verbal identifiers. Anyway, so the list real quick. First is the Wanderer. The Wanderer appears as a spectral entity with no physical body, but it appears in faded gray robes, usually carrying a staff of some kind. The staff is always made of some kind of dead material, so bone or dry wood, something that used to be alive and no longer is. It's never stone or any inanimate material, no metal. The Wanderer appears to someone, it varies who it is, speaks to them, and then shortly thereafter disappears. And after the Wanderer meets them, usually within maybe a week or so, they'll have an encounter with another, oftentimes a very notable eldritch entity. Not always, sometimes it's the lesser known ones, but it's like you meet the Wanderer, and as soon as that happens, you know soon you're going to be meeting another one like him. The Children of the Spheres, which I had shortened to COS at this point, COS, both to mess with one of our players. Have you played Bloodborne?
No, but I know quite a bit of lore about it.
Yeah, Orphan of Kos. That was one of our players has played a lot of Bloodborne. I was kind of messing with him because I knew he'd get the reference. And I just saw an opportunity. I was like, yeah, okay. But they would record every instance they could of the Wanderer's appearances because he seemed to be a very good indicator of what other eldritch beings were around and a good way to track them down and be like, okay, because they were in the early days, the Children of the Spheres were recording all the information they could about every kind of eldritch being, even the ones that just kind of were passing through and weren't even paying attention to people. They wanted to record everything they could and try to understand them as best as possible. This was before they became more like a cult. And so this list actually came from their research, ironically enough. So the Wanderer, fairly basic. Nobody really knows anything about it. It comes and it goes, and that's it. The second one is called Calamity. Calamity shows up, usually acts very violently. Most of the time, anyone who encounters it, if they survive, they're usually part of a group, and usually, in fact, nearly always, most of their group ends up dying, and they're the only ones that got away because, they ran faster. This thing is extremely violent. It basically looks like I think actually Clarence Player said it best. It looks like a Redead from Ocarina of Time, kind of a withered husk, eyeless, toothless, just this desiccated corpse-like creature with limbs stretched out in weird angles and lengths. And it's very violent, seems to be hostile to basically everything and everyone. But that's not really what the Calamity is. The Calamity, the name, comes from the fact that after this thing appears, some kind of major local calamity affects the surrounding lands. Famine, plague, war, natural disasters. One case there was a meteor that wiped out a city. There's always some terrible event that takes place. It's unclear whether calamity appears before a disaster that's already impending or if its presence causes the disaster. But whenever it's around, there's a certainty that something bad is going to happen on a large scale. So that's probably the one that is most relevant to the rest of the world other than Kos, because when he shows up, or it shows up, it's like, oh crap. Prepare everyone. The third one is one of my creepier ones. It's called the Lover. The Lover always appears to people as, it appears as either male or female based on what the observer considers most attractive. The Lover approaches people and tries to seduce them. Doesn't always succeed. There doesn't seem to be any magical effect involved in this other than their appearance and personality that is, tailor-made for that, whoever that person is, specifically for what they find most attractive. But there doesn't seem to be any magical charm effect or anything else taking place. So some people resist, other people don't. And those who are seduced often disappear and are never seen again. Sometimes they return but are messed up in the head, often going insane. Or just they become unhinged or unstable.
Right.
And every single person who's ever met the Lover reports that after their meeting, their memories of it, he, she, whatever, are distorted. So like, and they are distorted specifically based on how long and how much they interacted with it. So if they met it in passing, said, okay, no, I'm not interested, and they walk away, then they remember it was sort of like, yeah, they were attractive, but something about them is just a little weird. Something like, when I'm thinking back on it, something feels a little off, and I don't know what it is. The people who interacted more, talked for long periods of time, or actually were seduced, they reported that they remember it as this eldritch monstrosity that often will drive them insane. And a lot of the people who survived the encounter ended up committing suicide afterward because it just screwed with their heads so much. There doesn't seem to be any pattern that anyone knows as to who it targets and why, but who knows with these things. Oh, and then
You never really can tell.
yeah, and that's part of when I was writing these. Like, I wanted to make I wanted things to be clear enough that we have defined characteristics and we can say what these things do, but not necessarily know why. So the fourth one, the Forgotten. The Forgotten's a fun one. He appears to people in dreams, only they never remember the dreams. You might ask, wait, if nobody remembers the dreams, how in the world could anybody know this thing exists? So oftentimes people who meet this thing in their dreams end up sleepwalking and sleep talking and having conversations with it. And people who are around them, family and friends who hear them talking in their sleep, record these things, and some of them, shared these stories, and eventually it got enough information, enough of these stories got around that people started piecing together, wait, they're talking to the same being. But again, they never actually remember it. Even people who have tried to do lucid dreaming, who have tried to do things specifically to remember, they can remember their entire dream, but not that being or any conversation with it. And they end up becoming very confused when people say, yeah, I heard you talking in your sleep. You were talking to this being, like when you were doing the lucid dream. I heard what you were saying. Like, I never said any of that. I never had that conversation. Also, after meeting the Forgotten, though, it tends to lead people to, people often have sharp changes in behavior. Usually, like, the best way to describe it is, you think of people saying, well, I'd always wanted to, learn this hobby or do this thing, or I've always wanted to write a book. I've always wanted to, go on a cross-country road trip, but I never got around to it. Very abruptly, they seem to just go in and just do that thing, whatever it was they previously desired to do but never got around to. Suddenly they're doing all the things that they've been holding in, waiting for the right time, or just too anxious, too nervous, too uncertain. They would just do those. Now, one thing I actually didn't tell the party, but kind of goes without saying, I suppose. These aren't always good things. Sometimes it causes people to do really bad things, but it also sometimes does cause them to do really good things. It doesn't seem to have any moral inclination one way or the other. I had forgotten to mention that during the previous reading. I don't think that's necessarily super relevant. I doubt anyone in the party would have necessarily cared. It's kind of in line with everything we've seen so far.
I think double say that. I mean, repeat yourself real quick.
So, the things those people do. Sometimes the things that the people do that are influenced by the Forgotten, sometimes they're really, really bad things. Sometimes they're really, really good things. And sometimes they're just, going off and writing a book or whatever. It doesn't seem to have any kind of moral inclination one way or the other as to what it encourages people to do. It's just whatever they've been holding in, they just suddenly start acting on it. And if they're a bad person, well, they're acting on all the bad things they've been keeping themselves, all the things they've been refraining from doing, they suddenly act on it. But again, they could also end up going out and doing good things. I didn't really mention that part to the party, but it's probably not super relevant. The fifth one, we're almost down to the end of the list. The fifth is the Pale Star. The Pale Star appears in places where Outer Planes magic is rife and all over the place. And it appears, as the name describes, as a pale star in the night sky that, it's sort of it's a pale yellow star in the sky, day or night. And it appears in places where the Outer Planes magic is very prevalent and where things from the other side, from the Outer Planes, have been slipping through. The group Children of the Spheres attempted to use this. It's almost like a warning signal, but the problem is by the time this thing shows up, you can usually tell just by looking around. It's like, okay, we can tell there's already corruption here. This isn't helping us see anything. It's just, it's more of an indication that it's really, really bad. It's almost like a red alert signal in a way. But again, it's unclear if it's actually there as a warning or if it just happens to be there. Also, there's another being who manifests at the same time who's a stargazer. Most people seem to think that this is another aspect of the pale star's manifestation, that it's not a separate entity, it's just part of the same entity. This stargazer is always standing there watching the pale star, never talks to anyone, never listens to, never says anything or responds in any way. It's just always there watching. And the stargazer's appearance also tends to change a bit. sometimes male, female, taller, shorter, different skin and eye colors, but overall its behavior remains consistent. So finally, the Smiling Man. Everyone's favorite.
This one we actually do somewhat know.
Well, the current party doesn't. This guy was actually referenced in the one shot, and it's a spoiler, but it's not a spoiler. I mean, everybody knows it's the same guy. It's like, well, we technically don't know. No, it's the same guy. The Smiling Man is... So, he appears to be a normal human, superficially. He does have some unusual features. He has very sharp, angular facial features. He wears bright, garish clothing. In, various colors, but always something very bright, very visible. And he's always smiling very, very widely. Now, what's interesting about him is he interacts with mortals more so than anyone else. He travels around, and often he'll set up shop somewhere and make deals with people. He'll offer them rare goods, rare items, rare knowledge in exchange, sometimes for money, but usually in exchange for a service. He's like, you want that? I'll give that to you, but I need you to do something for me. And this is how the party in that one-shot session, the bonkers, off-the-wall... We had what was it? A construct with a sentient gun that was evil. We had a scarecrow who summoned shadow weapons and he wielded a pitchfork. We had a dude that was basically V from Devil May Cry 5 and summoned a demon Eidolon. It was totally ridiculous and off the wall. The party doesn't know about this. The players do, but yeah, it was completely ridiculous. And fantastic. I loved that session. One very unique thing about him, however, is one interesting thing, I suppose. With the other ones, they never really have conversations with people most of the time. But if you approach him and you inquire about the Outer Planes, he'll tell you openly. He's like, yep, absolutely. I'm a resident from the Outer Planes. He won't hide. He doesn't advertise it. He doesn't just go around telling everyone, but he doesn't hide it either.
It reminds me of a character from The Witcher. Well, particularly Witcher 3, one of the DLCs, I'm not sure which one. He essentially grants people's wishes, is what he says. And when you try to peer into, his true nature, he's like, no. I'm going to spare you this one time and not going to grant that. Really, because anyone who ever finds out my true nature, they end up with a fate worse than death.
Oh. That's horrifying. I wasn't thinking about that at all. The only inspiration I took was actually Alucard from Hellsing. And his appearance was based on Alucard from Hellsing. Very much so. Take any picture of Alucard when he's doing his super wide smile with the big wide brimmed hat and everything. That was the only inspiration I took.
The concept of it is very similar.
Yeah. Now, some people do claim he's something of a trickster god. He's not actually a trickster, though. Like, he doesn't deceive people. When he makes a deal, he does good on his deal. It's just usually there's a little more to the deal than you usually expect. Either he sends you on a quest to do something that, has a twist to it. Like when he sent the party to save... He sent the one-shot party to save that one elven lady who he ended up then killing so that he could bring her back, so that he could kill her again. And all of this was so that she could essentially time travel into the past and rewrite history. And he took possession of the defunct timeline that was erased when she went into the past. So that's really what he was asking the party to do. It's like, I want you to get me I want to own a timeline, a splinter timeline. And if he had told the party that, you'd have all been like, how the hell are we supposed to do that? But no, he actually just said, I need you to save this one particular lady. And the time travel bit was part of her own story. And as a plot twist, she's actually connected to one of the party members in the current campaign. But I need a whole episode of this podcast just to explain her background. Half of which the party doesn't know yet, so, spoilers. Anyway, so... yes, That's basically all it is about the Smiling Man. There's a tiny bit more. There's some information he's given people about random things here and there. Apparently, he's mentioned a few other eldritch beings known as antinomy, which, if you look that up, if you Google the term, it relates to paradoxes, and dark light, which in itself also sounds like a paradox. No mortals cannot, according to him, perceive these beings, but they are around. It's just nobody knows that they are there. Also, some people have asked him about information for the furthest spheres and the outer sphere, or the outer spheres and the furthest sphere where he claims to come from, and he says he's given them explanations, but most of them have never made sense. The most sense anyone is able to make was he said something about cosmic reticulation and fractal geometries, whatever that means. It's like, okay, that's weird.
It means stuff beyond my pay grade.
I mean, those things actually mean stuff. Those terms.
Oh, I know.
I picked
it
words that mean
means
stuff.
things that are beyond my pay grade.
Yeah. And I have a vague idea of what they mean. Obviously the problem with trying to figure out how the outer spheres work is that you can't make a sensible explanation for something that makes no logical sense. But I have a few, as the author, I have a very few rough ideas and kind of a very rough pattern to follow if I need inspiration from coming up with future stuff. But I don't know the specifics because I am deliberately avoiding writing anything that would explain what that stuff is. In fact, some of these explanations, some of these dark pantheon deities, I actually had stuff written for them in my original form that I took out and said, no, I don't want that. I want to leave that one up in the air. Maybe that is the case, maybe it's not. So there was more details available, and I took it out because I'm like, no, I'd rather leave it more vague. Mostly about, it was mostly about the Wanderer. No. The Pale Star and the Lover both had more detail involved in like what their modus operandi was. I'm like, no, let's take that out and leave them more vague. And there's a few more entries in this list that are just very short stubs, but they are worth mentioning. So the first one is a Dark Pantheon entity known as Gemini. Gemini appears as two near identical twins whose main ability seems to be being very creepy. Nobody knows what their deal is, except that they're just a pair of creepy twins.
Yeah.
So, maybe it will be relevant, maybe it won't, but that was an idea I came up with a while back about having a pair of creepy twins appear in the game. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put that in the Dark Pantheon. Have it mentioned, even if the party never encounters them. Second is something called a Void Elemental. Now, this one actually came from an entry from a third-party Pathfinder. Let me see. I want to see who was it, because I should give them credit for this. It was a book called Epic Meepo Presents Monsters. Epic Meepo Presents Gaming. It's that they made a third-party thing, and in that entry they came up with the Void Elemental. It's described as, and this is literally their entry. This creature resembles a pillar of inky darkness with numerous grasping tendrils. I literally just ripped that off. Credit goes to them.
Yeah.
I may or may not actually use it. Unfortunately, I do not have it in my hero lab, so I can't use that stat block. I'd have to do all of the stats manually. But whether or not you guys encounter it, I don't know. We'll see. And the last one is also a weird one. Shard. Shard is a being that manifests as a perfect duplicate of a mortal somewhere. A mortal, not immortal. And now I say perfect, I do mean perfect duplicate. Exact appearance, exact memories, exact personality. It is unclear if it is simply copying someone else, or if this being does not even know that they're copying. If they just, duplicate another's appearance without even realizing they're doing it. Do they think they are the original? Nobody seems to know. Investigating it's near impossible, because whenever they're talking to it, most of the time the people doing the investigation can't tell if they're talking to the original or the copy, because it apparently distorts people's perceptions. That'll keep you up at night.
Yes.
And the final bit.
Like, are you really you, or are you just an imitation of somebody who once was?
Yeah. Now, unless you encounter someone who's a perfect, exact one-for-one copy of someone else you've encountered. There's no reason to think you're necessarily around it. And I realized, by the way, that I had to say it's an exact one-for-one. Like, I had to specify this because of Esteva's vision, where she saw another version of herself who looked a little bit different. It's not a one-for-one. There's some definite key differences. You know, different hair color, different clothing, different equipment. The other her is dressed much more like an assassin, whereas this her is an investigator. Anyway, and the last thing the party did, one of the people who had knowledge local remembered after reading all of this, like, wait a minute, I've heard stories about some weird smiling merchant who lives somewhere in the borderlands between human and orc territory in one of these, you know, independent cities. It might be the same guy, but who knows? So they've got that in their pocket. And that was the end of their investigation into the library. There wasn't much else to do. They did some other random side things that wouldn't make sense unless I spent half an hour explaining them. But they were just wrapping up, making copies of some records, making ciphers for the records, so that if anybody...
Yeah. We split it up in 7 different ways. So not 7 different sections. We split it up 7 different ways randomly, and then we coded it all. That way you can't actually figure out what was going on unless you got all 7 and decoded all 7.
Yeah.
Which, granted, probably won't be very hard for somebody to do, but it will take a lot of time because you gotta not only find all 7, but then you have to decode it and then figure out where each piece belongs.
Yeah. How many Dragon Balls are there? Well, it's 9, isn't it?
I wouldn't be the one to ask.
Oh,
I am
fair.
not a huge fan of
Oh, that's
Dragon
right.
Ball.
Yeah, you said that the other day. I just like you have to find. Actually, no, that's what I'm thinking. Chaos Emeralds. You have to find all 7. I was like, I feel like there's other references to having to find all. Well, I mean,
If it was 6, it'd be the Affinity Stones.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a few, and let's see. You guys did something with the Vigeru staff. You decided to leave the staff there because it was dispelling Outer Planes magic, not explaining the staff background. Again, that's a whole nother story. We can get into that in another day. So the last thing before the party left, you met with the young elven lady named Astoria, who believes that her mother was a witch that was attacked by the Black Iris, similar to the way that Hazel was attacked, and she asked if she could assist you guys in hunting them down. Well, at this point, Proda did something interesting, something I had not expected. He suggested that the party might try to recruit the Black Iris, since they seem to have a mutual enemy in the Dark Tapestry. Now, Astoria would rather get revenge because she believes her mother was killed by them, but she's willing to make a concession given that at this point they're facing it seems like a world-ending crisis. They need all the help they can get if the party can actually convince them. So he had to roll to convince her, but she was willing to go along and say, okay, fine, I will be willing to concede if you can make it work. But if there's any question about it, I don't want to, have these guys potentially stab us in the back later. So she offered to go ahead. They sent her on to the Elven capital to do further research and to look into more stuff about the Black Iris, talk to some of their contacts. And so she's going to be showing up in the next session. But she went away, and then the party left, and they went to the Drow City. And this is where things get fun. So, Erlon, what were your thoughts going into the Drow City? Because this is where everything got super interesting.
I honestly didn't. I was prepared to convince others to, not just straight up fight it. But I was prepared to fight it, and he knew he was more than likely going to die if they did fight it.
Yeah, so part of the background, of course, I explained before about the demon. The local priests who follow a deity named Anarel, I'm not getting into the religious aspects either, that takes way too much time. They had long sought, the Drow priests specifically, they had long sought guidance from their deity as to what do we do about this demon? How do we respond? And they had basically been told leave it be. But if it's, it's doing its thing, it's giving the drow information against the Deepwood, just don't attack it. Don't, tell people to support it. Just essentially just step back and leave it alone and don't do anything. That was the public answer. Now, there was a secret that a few of them had been told, but they were not willing to share this with everyone. Because a lot of the drow didn't like having that demon around.
No.
Well, one of the party members serves this same deity. And so the party they actually went to speak to a paladin who was already a friend of theirs who helped them with the invasion and said, hey,
So a couple of them do. Two of our party members worship Anarau.
Yeah, but one of them's a ranger, whereas the other's a cleric. The cleric kind of has a little more weight than the ranger.
Yeah, that's fair.
Also, to be fair, that ranger isn't 100% great at following the teachings.
That's fair. He kind of does it in his own way.
Yeah, he's a little more aggressive in his interpretation. But interestingly enough, I had a whole scene planned for the party meeting with the lead priest and asking. And I was going to have Clarin, that's the cleric who follows Anaral, I was going to have him talk to the guy, and the guy would recommend that he basically go and consult the deity himself, because the explanation was, the head priests were told, this is not for you. There is someone coming who is specifically chosen for this task, but it is not you and your people. You need to leave it be and just wait for the person who's going to be coming. They didn't tell people this because if there's lots of people who are like, we need to get rid of the demon, and you tell everyone, oh, one is coming who is going to deal with the demon for us, they'll be like, oh, it's like the coming of the Messiah. And they're like, no, that's not what this is. So Clarin and the party Clarin's with, obviously the players, when he prayed and he used his commune spell, which the player we had a whole debate about whether or not he should have to use commune, but anyway, he used the commune spell, and his answer was basically, so the background, they don't actually know where demons come from, but one of the theories is that they used to be mortals who were transformed, and he was told, essentially, assuming that was true, acting on that assumption, what would you do? And his statement was, I would try to redeem it if possible, and only destroy it if it can't be redeemed. And that's where the answer stopped. It's like, essentially, fair enough. Go forth. And so he led the party down, and he said, I want to try to redeem it. I don't know how you can redeem a demon prince, but let's go talk to this thing. And the paladin, whose name was Ethris, he was kind of torn on it, because he's like, I want to kill it, but at the same time the priests say no. I don't know what we should be doing. And when Clarin gave his insight, he was like, okay, I'll take you down there, we'll talk to the thing, but I'm going in with sword and shield raised, and I'm going to be ready for a fight at any given moment. And you also managed, I would like to point this out, again, I thought the party was going to talk to the city leaders first. Ask them about the things with the treaty. Ask them about the stuff. No, Ethris gave this whole explanation about there's a political divide among the drow. How some of them want to kill the demon, some of them want to potentially keep it alive, and essentially some of them want to erase the history of having worked with the demon, so that when the treaty with the elves is proposed, they don't have that kind of black mark on their record, right? Yeah, and the other faction is like, you can't build an alliance on lies. It's not going to work. Because what happens if they do find out we were lying to them? That's just going to make things even worse. And they were fighting amongst themselves. That entire explanation was supposed to come from the head of the council, the Drow Council. That was supposed to be Councilman Doros who gave you that explanation. But you skipped Councilman Doros, and the rest of the council went to Ethris instead. And I'm like, I guess he's explaining it? Because also, notably, Councilman Doros was probably the most, I won't say he wasn't indifferent, but he's the most neutral party, because his take on it is his purpose there is to try to get all the people working together on the same page, so he helps resolve disputes, but he does not try to go in as a leader to impose his own will. His mentality is, I impose the will of the council, and if the council can't come to a decision, I do my best to get them on the same page so they can decide on something, but I don't tell people what to do, because that's how you create division, and right now we're fighting for our lives. We can't afford that. So he was the only neutral party. Ethers was not neutral, but he was the only one I had because you went to him.
Yeah.
And the only alternative was to railroad you back to talking to Councilman Doris. And I was like, well, okay. I'll just have to adapt this and give it to you the other way. So, yes, so the party ended up... They went down into the tunnel. And Estiva, who had previously had a vision about this demon, had another vision. A very apocalyptic vision. And I don't know if I should even try explaining this. Well, so actually, I can summarize this fairly well once you guys got to the end. Essentially, what she saw was a vision of... It looked like the people were kind of making a last stand against something. They were in a sealed room holding off monsters trying to break down the doors. And someone who the party has met previously, who they are kind of on shaky ground with at the moment, but they're generally on the same side. He was working with them, and apparently the gist of what they got was he was using magic to send a message. And the focal point of this message was Estiva, the person, and a point in time when the portal that was creating the magical corruption in the big city, the city of Ajendo, when that portal exploded. When that portal... Now, they've already been through that. When that portal actually exploded, she was hit by the shockwave, knocked unconscious, and she had a vision. Now, this time, as she's going through the tunnel... Oh, yeah, that's true.
A lot of people got knocked around.
Yeah, pretty much everyone in the party had some kind of vision, except Erlon. He just died. And then had an afterlife vision. Hey, you got your respect. Don't complain.
Yeah, I know. Don't worry
I needed a way to justify... Besides that, I could have just had it that it was all a dream, but frankly, it felt cooler to actually have a character die and come back to life and get
made
you...
more sense than it.
Get you that close to actually having to fight the Black Pharaoh.
Well, the thing is, I had a respec in mind that kind of fits with everything he was been doing up till this point.
True, but I had lore I needed to share.
That is true. Yeah.
So,
do you even remember how I described how I would do the respec?
What do you mean? How you would do it?
Essentially is... Because I didn't use a lot of the abilities that I was swapping out anyway, it's like I would have played it off. It's like technically I was always a Kensai, but I refused to use the stances and the abilities that I learned from my mentor until I got my head sorted out.
Yeah. So, I mean, and you could have done that canonically.
Especially when I had the fight with Norden. It's like when I used the other stance.
Yeah. What the thing I wanted to do though was I wanted to do this because essentially I was giving you a timeline that had an alternate version of Erlon who was more of what he wished he could have been, right? Focused more on the sword, less on the magic. Because you're so for anyone listening, he's playing a Magus class, which is essentially half sword or half fighter, half wizard, and he can use the two of them together. And the original version of the Magus was roughly balanced between the two. The Kensai, though, focuses much more on the swordsmanship aspect, and it gets a little bit less magic.
Yeah, it essentially swaps out the spell recall, spell progression in terms of, okay, now you get, at this level, you're now considered a fighter for fighter feats. And then a few other skills to help with crit, upping the critical ratio, upping the critical damage if I spend Magus points.
Critical range,
and also giving additional reactions.
Yeah.
All based off intelligence modifier.
Yeah. So that is speaking theoretically, that's what Erlon would have been if his father hadn't been a douche. to him growing up and forcing him to pursue stuff he wasn't good at. So this was also my way of kind of being like, this is for you in the respect, but it's also kind of for Erlon, that he's kind of like, this is the theoretical, well, what kind of life could I have lived if I dedicated myself to this instead? It's like, oh, this is actually the life you had lived in that other timeline. Plus, it also gave me an opportunity to reveal stuff about that timeline to you and to the other party members, because up until that point, only Andalus had been getting any insight into what had happened in that first time. Right. So, and the other thing was I didn't want it to just be Andalus, because while I do have several previous timelines, that one right there is the most important, that has the most fleshed out information. So yeah. I wanted to make sure to give multiple entryways and angles for the party to learn about that timeline, because with the other two, it's like, okay, this is a timeline where apparently you guys lost. This is a timeline where the war never even happened in the way you guys are experiencing it, and things took a completely different course. It's like, okay, kind of bits and pieces, but you don't really need to know about those because there's not a lot of relevant information. This is essentially a timeline where you guys succeeded, but something caused somebody to go back and rewrite history to change what took place. The only explanation that's been given is essentially, I believe it was the price was too high. But what price, and according to who was it too high? That was never explained. It will be eventually, I presume. That depends on what questions Andalus asks. Speaking of which, I need to write up his next vision. And actually his last one, too. I guess he'll be having 2 visions in the next session.
Yeah.
I missed one. The first one, actually, the one he was asking for, isn't going to be all that much, because he wants to say, like, what was my first meeting with this guy? It wasn't super impressive, but I'll tell you. He wants to know, so.
So just let him know.
Yeah. So anyway, where did we break off from? Oh, the vision, Esteva's vision. So she had seen a vision where she had essentially been given a message. It was I guess 3 pieces. It's all one message, but it was in 3 kind of overall big pieces. I guess 4, but 2 of them are close. Anyway, number 1, she saw a vision of the southern Deepwood and just hordes of monsters flooding out, destroying it, or rampaging over everything. That was the first thing she saw. Then it cut to her in the same tunnel that the party was now going down, just outside where the demon was locked up. Although the party later found it wasn't actually locked up, it was staying there by choice. Hiding, essentially. Hiding from the Deepwood monsters. And she appeared there, and somebody grabbed her by the shoulder, and she looked back, and she saw herself, except not, because the normal her has, like, I think teal-colored hair, and she's an investigator. This her has red hair, looks a bit more scarred up, and is carrying just like a whole assortment of weapons, and it looks a lot more like an assassin than like an investigator. And this person said, "Trust the demon." Then after another second, somebody grabbed her right shoulder. She looked back, and she saw her actual self, like just literally her one for one, except maybe a few differences, like a different weapon and some new equipment, whatever. But overall, the same general appearance. And this her said, "Remember the name Agathian." Now, Agathians are another kind of planar outsider. They're essentially they're neutral, good outsiders, and in my lore specifically, because again we're not using Galarian, they are theorized to be the polar opposites of demons. Theorized that they were once mortals as well, that were also transformed, but they were good, whereas the demons were evil. So she had done some research into this. It was like, okay, what does any of this mean? Well, she came here. This time she had a vision of the people who were sending that message. There was creatures trying to bust down a door, people holding them back. There's an individual who was apparently gathering his energy and actually burning up. He was an undead who was burning up his own remaining life essence to send this message. And one of the party members, Hazel, was using Esteva's own blood, which is a thing she can do, to focus this and basically give them the strength they need to target past Esteva to send that message to her. She also saw in this space, because this wasn't a vision, it was a vision, but it was a vision of a thing that actually presumably happened in another timeline, right? She saw the redheaded her offer her blood and also help with the whole process of sending the message. This confused her even more because she's like, wait, like, she's an actual person, not just a weird vision thing. That doesn't make any sense. So that is still completely up in the air. Nobody can make any sense of what that was about, but she has a better idea of where that message came from. And then just as that whole scene was about to fade away, she saw a black humanoid silhouette that she didn't actually tell you about it, did she, Erlon? The solid black humanoid silhouette that was reaching out for her. And that was missing a finger on one hand. You there?
Yep, I'm still here.
You didn't actually, she didn't tell you about that in character, did she? About the black silhouette that was reaching out for her?
I don't think so.
Did you recognize that description?
The black silhouette that was
that was reaching out for her, and before it could reach her, another hand came in and knocked her away to keep it from being able to touch her. I don't know. Maybe you figured out who those were that she was dealing with. When the vision was fading, something tried to grab her. Do you remember that part?
I do remember that part. That's the one when I was right in the middle of being revived, correct?
So, from...
Oh, no, it was not...
It was from her vision.
About Hazel. It was not Hazel. You're talking about Esteva, right?
Yeah, it was Esteva's vision, who she saw a hand knock her away before the black figure could grab her.
Yeah, I was assuming that was Card.
Well, the one who knocked her away was Card, but did you know who the other one was?
No, with everything going on, I didn't quite catch it.
Well, it was just a solid black humanoid figure trying to grab her.
Yeah.
No specificity. You might be able to guess. But it is very similar to your situation. But no, yeah, all she saw when she was flying away was a brown fox, who then whispered good luck to her before disappearing, and then shortly after she woke up. So that was a much more... Funny thing is, that whole scene, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, maybe I did. That whole apocalyptic scene was meant to be much longer. There was a whole section leading up to it, like how they got into that room, like the crystal arrow and the explosion. Those were all pieces of the overall scene that I cut out, and I just cut right to the last section because I didn't want to bog down the session too much, but I also didn't want to give too much too soon. I'm thinking I'll give you the rest of the scene, I'll give you guys the rest of the scene later. Anyway, finally the party meets the demon right at the same time that Angelus's player had to leave, so he missed the entire conversation. And you guys went in fully expecting a fight. You're like, because his player Angelus said, I'm giving someone control of my PC for the fight in case you guys need me. And you guys figured that out. Never had to happen because you didn't need his PC for the fight because there was no fight. But it definitely played out different than you guys were expecting. So I don't remember that I had a whole conversation written out, but it didn't go in the order that I wrote, so I can't quite remember exactly how things played out. But the party approached. The demon was kind of taunting the paladin. He said something very vague to the paladin about the paladin was trying to hide his emotions about something, but the demon was able to perceive them anyway. But Ethris didn't say anything. The demon kept all of his statements very obscure and very vague so as not to reveal anything. Interestingly enough, the party never asked about that after the fact, but I imagine they probably just forgot. And so yeah, so they talked to him. He introduced himself. The demon introduced himself as Talgroth. And he was kind of playing this like verbal back and forth, like, are you here to kill me? Are you here to save me from the traitorous drow? Like, what reason could you have for wanting to be here? And he also, and I was actually surprised that more people didn't step up. He demonstrated he had the ability to perceive certain things about the party, and he recognized. So it seemed at first to be almost like a divination ability. He could see their future. He revealed that's not the case. He's apparently able to sense things about them, and he makes predictions according to the things that he sensed, which apparently he senses by smell. So he just takes a deep breath, smells something about them, and then makes his comments. And Erlon was the only one who stepped forward. I expected at least one other person.
I stepped forward twice.
Well, the second time, but he had already shared his.
Well, I stepped close. Well, I essentially just stepped closer.
Yeah, but so I had a blurb written for every single character in the party, but you were the only one who actually got yours. And his statement to you, and I actually have all this written out so I can quote it. He says, he said, "You waste my time and yours. You already know your fate. A path paved in blood and tears, and at the end of it, emptiness. Why do you chase questions that can have no good answer? Wouldn't you prefer the bliss of ignorance?" So how did Erlon actually take that? Because I saw his visible reaction. How was he interpreting that internally? I'm curious.
Actually, he's so used to everyone else saying the same thing, so it's nothing new to him.
So, was he at all surprised about the accuracy of its response? Because it wasn't just some obscure random nonsense.
Kinda, but mostly yeah, the accuracy of it was odd, considering the fact that he has no other point of reference to my knowledge.
Yeah.
But he pretty much got, how Erlon normally goes about his life, which is to die, usually.
Well, he was not actually talking about the risk of Erlon dying. He wasn't referencing that at all.
Oh, I know he wasn't referencing that. It's just...
He was referencing Erlon's mentor.
Yeah.
Basically, he's saying whatever the answer...
Yeah, whatever answer I come to, I'll feel empty in one way or another.
Yeah, basically he's saying there's no answer that's going to completely satisfy you. Anything that whatever the answer ends up being for why your mentor did what he did, there's going to be something wrong with it. But note he actually didn't tell you that you shouldn't. He presented as a question like, why do you do this? Like, wouldn't you prefer being ignorant? Wouldn't you prefer living in blissful ignorance? But he didn't necessarily say, well, it's better if you don't know. He was just saying like, wouldn't you be happier if you didn't know? I don't think in any of my things, not that you heard any of them, I don't think in any of them did he actually point to anything that would indicate a right or wrong answer or any kind of morality. It was more like, you sure you want to do this? The most interesting one of the whole list was actually Prota, but I'm disappointed he didn't step forward. No, I take that back. Estivas was the most interesting. But most of the others were kind of indications of things the party already knew, maybe with just a little bit extra. And the only one that was like, there was one specifically where he was just like, I don't want to say anything to you. And you might be able to... Actually, who would you think that was if he didn't want to give an answer for one of the party members?
Who did you say that to?
He didn't say it to anyone, but there was one of them who he would have been like, I don't want to say anything about you, if they had stepped forward.
Hazel, I'm guessing.
No, close. He had his own thoughts about Hazel, but it was actually Claren.
That was my next best guess.
Because with Claren, he was just like, I don't want to mess with you or your deity. I have no... Basically, just leave me alone. I don't even know why you want to be here. So, you chatted for a bit. You tried to ask some questions. I'm trying to remember all the things you guys were initially saying to try to, poke the bear, so to speak. You apparently tried to rile it up a few times by kind of agitating or taunting it.
Oh, yeah, but that was only... If you realize that I never went too far with it, and I always... Yeah. It was usually followed up by somebody else.
Yeah, because your goal was you were trying to agitate it to get it to open up and say something, to kind of let its guard down long enough to reveal something about itself. But you were never quite able to crack the armor, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right up until Estiva brought up Agathians, and he got mad. He got real mad. And I could just read through his whole speech again. But essentially his explanation was that the demons and the Agathians used to be on the same side. They actually used, from his explanation, apparently they all did used to be mortals. And they were actually fighting together in a war, according to him, a war against the World Eaters, which the party's read about this war. They know a bit of this history. And then at some point, they, the ones who had fought against the World Eaters, as he describes it, cast off their mortality, cast off their flesh and blood, and they transformed, made themselves into demons and Agathians. And, if he was to be believed, some of them actually became gods. And that was the origin of the pantheons that the people throughout the current world now worship, that they used to be mortals. Yeah. Now, that's very interesting because most of the party, there's two people who worship a deity that's not in those pantheons. Most of the party, including Erlon, Prota, Estiva, well, I guess Estiva's kind of an atheist, but Erlon, Prota, and several others, they worship, actually, no, I take that back. There are 3 party members who worship a deity that is not a part of the standard pantheon. 2 of them worship Anaro, and the 3rd one has a patron that she can't identify, which is apparently from the outer spheres. But most of the party follow deities from the standard pantheon. I'd say, like, what is it, 4? Yeah, that's over half. I'd say most. And Erlon's one of them. And apparently he's now having a crisis of faith.
Yeah, that's the thing that's going on.
So it's interesting to note. It's a really weird situation with Erlon. You more so than anyone else has really gotten into your character's religious beliefs, not counting, Claren, because he's a cleric. Kind of has to know his religious beliefs.
I've very lightly touched on his religious beliefs.
Well, you've still got more. Like, everyone else just picked a deity and was like, okay, let's go. Let's just play the game, right?
Yeah.
You actually went in and you identified your patron, and then later we had a conversation where you asked me about the deities of my iterations of the deities. Not because it's difficult because it's hard to put custom deities into Hero Lab. I think there's a way, but it takes a lot of work to do. So we're using like the closest thing we can find to that in Hero Lab. Or whatever. Like if you have a cleric, for instance, picking a deity that has a domain that you're sharing with one of the custom original deities. But you actually asked me about it, and you got me to finish working on and putting together the most of. I've not completely done with it, but I've done most of the pantheon. and you identified the elven deities, figured out which one you were following, and what's like the closest parallel among the other ones. And so,
Yeah, you were surprised about which one I picked.
well, so you previously, actually, I guess on your character sheet, it's still Caden Kalian,
Caden Killian.
which he falls into a couple of different domains. When I got the Elven Pantheon down, there was basically two ways you could have gone. The main one I was expecting was, so the thing about the Elven deities is all of them are neutral to one degree or another. So so if you're looking at, the alignment grid, the four corners are missing. The five other types of neutral. So neutral good, neutral evil, lawful or chaotic neutral, and then true neutral are the five elven deities. The one I was expecting was chaotic neutral, which is the trickster, which is about choices. Well, the domains are choices, travel, change, luck, liberty, and chaos. Now, choices and liberty, and maybe luck and travel kind of felt like... Oh, wife is home. Those kind of felt to me like the Erlon domains. Hi, hon. But you actually went with the neutral good one, which is the Keeper of the Scales. Their domains were birth, growth, death, harmony, self-perfection, and self-sacrifice. I imagine self-sacrifice is probably your biggest one. So about the lighting, you can turn that.
Oh, there was also the self-improvement.
You okay? You look frustrated.
I just kept getting caught on everything.
Oh.
His bag.
Oh, do you need help?
I need oxygen.
That's fair. I might need to take a quick break, but yeah, so I was expecting you, because Caden Kalian is more the deity about, his domains are alcohol, freedom, all of that stuff. I thought you'd go more in that direction, but he is also fairly heroic. I mean, he's kind of the idiot hero, but he is kind of heroic in his way. I'm pretty sure self-perfection was not one of his domains, though.
No.
So, but yeah, so you actually helped me work that out, and I was expecting, that you would go with a different deity. And so when we got to this point, it's interesting because you've put more thought into your character's kind of religious journey than anyone else in the party at this point. I mean, everyone else has put some thought into it, but for him, he actually was like trying to work out this whole thing. He convinced me to actually write out the Pantheon. So, I mean, several other people have. It's just he wanted a little extra. It's fine. Or at least we talked about it more, I guess. There was more that I heard about it.
That's, I think,
Well, not to mention I helped you settle on a couple of what their domains and their parallels were.
What's that?
So my character's been keeping everything close to the chest, as she always do.
That's fair, even from the GM.
I love you, but it didn't seem relevant to you.
No, that's fair. It's obviously becoming more relevant now, and now there's like several characters that are rethinking their religious beliefs. Now that's like, well, if these gods used to be mortals, then should we really be worshiping them?
Because by the side of it, some of them don't even want to be worshipped.
I want to bonk you with the bonking stick.
Well, some of them. Most of the ones that you guys are following are presenting themselves as deities, but there's some of them, including like
Rogue ones.
yeah, you know of one that you refer to as a rogue deity that is not a part of the standard pantheon. Serene, which is not related to Sarenrae. I named it for a completely different reason. The name has a very specific meaning, by the way. But she is not a part of the standard pantheon. She apparently used to be a really, really long time ago, but then left and is now kind of just off doing her own thing. Also, apparently she's the wife of the Archon, who, according to this demon, was the first and the most powerful of the gods to ascend. The Archon being the one who built that massive empire I was talking about and had a war against the World Eaters.
And don't forget forget. She
Yeah.
really considered herself a god
Because
as
that
much
was
as she also worships.
Yeah, that's another weird thing. Siriene was like, I'm not really a god. I just happen to have like near godlike powers, but it's just whatever. That's just magic. That I had that particular goddess played by my wife during that one session, which entertained me greatly. So yeah, so now the whole party's like reconsidering their religious views. And the demon also shared quite a few interesting notes about some other stuff. For instance, that the Archon and the other people, like the Archon he referred to as the first ascendant, indicating that he was also one of the deities. And essentially what his story was that the demons, the Agathians, used to fight on the same side, and they used to be part of the same group. But when the time came and they ascended or descended, as the case may be,
One of them revealed themselves to be an a-hole, and the rest didn't.
Yeah.
well, essentially the demons were, cast down while the Agathians and the others were lifted up. And he was saying, we fought together side by side for years during that war. There was no difference between us until we ascended, and then suddenly they looked down on us because we're evil, because we're monsters. And the one thing this is the thing I was disappointed by Andalus not being there, because when he said, where are they? I'm right here on the front lines. I'm helping the Drow fight this war. I'm fighting against the Dark Tapestry, while they're up in their high towers doing whatever it is they're doing. So who's really the good one here? Who's really the evil one? If they're so good, why aren't they down here fighting instead? If Andalus had been there, he probably would have sided with the demon immediately at that point. I don't know if that meant, what was it you said that Erlon understood the sense of, or the feeling of being betrayed, or he understood how it felt in that context. What was it about the demon's explanation that kind of made him?
It's essentially some of the strongest bonds people usually make are during, combat, warfare, or just, in the foxhole with each other. And then to just have them willingly ignore and even going back on it is just...
But there are treats, so happy kid.
Oh, that's right. You're gonna do the clippy clip.
He is too dang sharp.
I agree. I had forgotten you were planning to do it today.
I
So-
wasn't planning. I just got poked by him.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, and that's kind of the summary. There was a whole I could read through a bunch of these different things that the demon said. But yeah, okay. That's mostly the summary of what it said. And around the time Protus started going like, let's talk politics, then you guys got to the most interesting part, and you surprised me with this. One of the guys, the high commander of the Drow, walked in with a small contingent, and they were going to kill the demon, or try. They probably could have succeeded with the numbers they had, honestly.
But they most likely would have all, or most of them would have died.
Probably. And that was also, and we had a post-game conversation, your conversation with Lieutenant Dalziri, the swordsman, the right-hand man. That was the main reason he had joined them. Because he apparently, I literally rolled for it to see how religious he was, because the party made an interesting argument. I guess I'm jumping ahead of myself, but I rolled for it to see how religious he was, and I got an 18 on a 20 die. So I'm like, okay, he's really religious. So he didn't want to go against what the priests had said, but his concern as a warrior was, if I let them go, they're all going to die. If I go with them, I could at least potentially save a few lives. I can't stop them from going, so I might as well try to save as many people as I can.
Yeah.
Now, in the end, it actually worked to you guys' benefit because of how it all played out. Basically, the Yaldun was the name of the commander, High Commander Yaldun. He basically walked in and said, yeah, you get out of our way, we're going to kill the demon. And All of you guys actually chose to protect it. Now, that's not the part that surprised me. I had that combat planned out. I was expecting you to actually fight Yaldun. I was also expecting you to meet him earlier in the session and be more upset with him because he's being a jerk. But, you know, you win some, you lose some. So, the question I have for you with Yaldun. So with the demon, you were half and half because you heard the message before, trust the demon. But you were also ready to fight because you didn't know what to expect. When it came to Yaldun, why didn't you pick a fight with him? Like you specifically. I know some of the other party members, their reasoning. What was it that kept Erlon from wanting to fight, considering that Yaldun, he was being dishonorable, he was violating the will of the rest of the council, he was, you know, violating the will of the priests. He was basically taking the law into his own hands and deciding for himself what he was going to do. And he was not willing...
I don't concern myself with the pettiness of somebody else's ideals of grandeur.
Fair, but he was determined to fight. Like, there was pretty much no way you could have talked him down. The only way you made it was by talking down his men until he didn't have enough guys left to fight with.
Yeah.
So, was it just you were going with the rest of the party, or did you genuinely not care? Because I expected Erlon would be a little more upset by the fact that he was...
Oh, he was incredibly upset, but he also knew there was just a time and place for everything. And this was just not one of them.
I suppose that's fair.
Yeah.
Now, if Andalus had still been there, do you think there would have been a fight?
Yeah, he probably would have pushed for a fight much harder.
Yeah, probably so. Of course, I would have been more okay with it in that case, because usually Andalus, or the Andalus player, has to leave by a certain time, and if he had been there, then that would have given us the opportunity to actually, you know, have the fight. I think I need to schedule the fights earlier in the session, frankly.
Probably, because Andalus is the... I would think since Erlon not picks fights. Erlon does not pick fights.
No. Okay, I know Erlon does not pick fights. Well,
that
most of the time. Most of the time. There are certain things that sets him off, though.
The thing is, if he could have gotten a one-on-one with the guy, he would have taken him on, no problem. He didn't see the need to attack them all needlessly. Even if he attacked with no intent to, you know, kill, accidents happen and people die.
That's
and
fair.
he would not risk it.
So, you're saying if you had a chance to do one-on-one with Yaldun, or with the swordsman who was the second? Okay.
Yaldun.
Because you did eventually spar with the swordsman afterward.
Yes.
And that was, by the way, between sessions. That
was like a professional courtesy that he really wanted to do. But when it comes to Yaldun himself, it was it's like, yeah, he could tell he was a good commander because he obviously he talked people into going on a suicide mission. But at the same time, he's just like, you're just a petty little dude.
Well,
it's pretty much he's caught up in his own self-righteousness. Like, if I do this, then no one has to worry about it, and I can just sully my own hands. It's like, okay, yeah, but how many people are you dragging into this who are going to die because of your, you know, stupidity?
Yeah, I mean, he's not a completely irredeemable character. He's very stubborn, and once he sets his mind to something, he doesn't turn back from it, which makes him incredibly frustrating to deal with. Now what surprised me about that, so my expectation, I had things planned for different routes. If you guys had fought the demon, if you guys had, you know, actually if you guys had fought the demon, what I was going to do, because the demon was so powerful. So here's the way it worked out. Demon had made an oath not to hurt any drow unless he was attacked first. So if he was fighting on your side and you were protecting him, he could only give minimal assistance. He could summon some monsters to aid you and give you magic boosts, like with his bardic inspiration. But he couldn't really do much more than that. If you attacked him, he could go all out. But the thing is, in that instance, the demon would have been stronger and your enemy, but you would have had some of Yaldun's people on your side instead. So,
Biscuits is smart.
yes, he is. Are you still planning to get him and clip him?
That's the plan.
Okay,
I've got more treats.
good luck.
I got Twizzler all them.
So,
Minimal hissing.
So my expectation, though, coming into this was you guys. Well, obviously, I thought you'd go to meet the politician people first. Biscuit,
You really should
May I have
notice
There's more
our
treats over here.
our order of things by now, because I don't think we've ever actually talked to politicians first when we could very obviously talk to somebody else.
Well, that's fair, but this was a politically oriented thing, right? So going to talk to politicians about politics makes sense. That seemed reasonable to me at the time. Going forward, I don't think that's going to be my thoughts proceeding, because that's not what happens ever. But my expectation was you were going to talk to them first. You're going to get really ticked off at Yaldun for being a jerk during those conversations. You were going to eventually talk to some people, learn the whole thing with Clarin, and that you guys were the ones who were supposed to deal with the demon. You're going to go down, talk to the demon, decide that we don't actually want to kill this thing. We want to keep it alive. Yaldun shows up, you fight him, and Yaldun, at least, ends up dying. Because if that had happened, the Drow would have to pick a new High Commander, and guess who was like number 2 in line if they did that?
Guy would like.
Yeah.
Captain Kervina, Ethris, the Paladin. Now that that's not the case, that means that Ethris is now a wild card who can travel with you guys for a while and still operate as an ambassador. So again, you ruined my plans for a character, not in a strictly bad way, but you had the same thing with the Shadow.
We're very good at getting people who you intend to live to die, and people who you intend to die to live.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard you.
What she said.
Well, yeah, I heard what she said.
So my thought was that just like I expected the Shadow to come back and come after you guys again, you beat her and you ruined that plan. This time it's like, okay, I'm taking Ethris out of the picture because now he's got to stay with the Drow and focus on them. Now he's traveling with your party. So it's like, okay, that's a thing. I'm probably still going to find ways to keep him preoccupied in the Elven City so I don't have to add him to the next combat. But yeah, he's now he has the potential to be a much more active NPC in the story than he was going to be before. Because I'm trying not to bog things down too much and have too many active NPCs all run all at the same time. I'm trying to kind of put each in their own little corner.
We're not exactly making that easy for you.
No, you're not. But you are going after the NPCs, not the other way around. See, I don't want to just dump NPCs on you constantly. So between Ethris, Astoria, Arlena, there's just so many people. It's like, okay, can we put... And so my plan was really to use this to get rid of Yaldun, put Ethris in that position, and kind of just tuck him into that role, and I can potentially remove him from being super active and super dynamic. Like I can really just put him in his place and leave him there, and then I can focus on setting up the next piece. That's not an option anymore because you guys mess it up, which is fine. Again, I do this because I like it when you guys mess up my plans. So I have to figure out what to do with him going forward, and also how long he's going to travel with you. Because theoretically, if and when you leave Elven lands, he should stay behind because he's still an ambassador. But who knows? Maybe he'll keep going with you. I don't know at this point. So I notice you haven't been talking much. I know you're super tired because you haven't slept much.
Well, that and a lot of this is the best done by you rather than me.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, so overall, since we are getting down to like the last 10 minutes before I have to end because I got stuff to do later. So overall, so the expectation going in for me was that you guys were gonna go in expecting to fight with a demon, be like, oh, this dude, we actually don't want to fight him. At the least, we're neutral toward him. Maybe we don't actually trust him, but we're not going to try to kill him because we think he's not strictly evil. And Clarin wants to try to redeem him, potentially see if that demon can become an Agathian somehow.
Yeah.
But you're still not sure if that's even a possibility yet. He seems to be following his deity's instructions, so it probably is, maybe. But I wasn't.
Well, we will know when we know.
Yeah, you'll find out eventually. And Yaldun. Oh, and also Dalziri, who wasn't even supposed to be a conversational NPC. Like, he was supposed to go down in that fight, and you didn't really interact with him much more afterward. But, I mean, even if he had lived, he still would have been, like, out for a while. So you would have had to move on. Now he's become an NPC. He's just supposed to be the second in line in the fight. He wasn't supposed to be a person. I don't want to make more NPCs. I'm not trying to, I promise.
Well, we're not really giving much of a choice.
Please don't. Don't expect that from me. Anyway. Now there was...
Too late.
Anyway, so there is one... Well, my main thing right now is I want to try to bring back as many of the old ones as I can. Reintroduce the ones you've already seen. So that it's... I'm not piling new stuff on you. I'm reintroducing those characters you already know. And, you know... using the elements that are there. I'm introduced you to the world. Now, when you meet these people, it's not like, okay, what's their vibe? Like, you know how you feel about most of these people. And you've avoided a lot of the worst ones.
Yeah.
You know, not counting Vionola, but...
No, Vionola is like, we dealt with that one as best as we feasibly could have. Probably better, maybe, but at the same time, we didn't really have much of a choice.
Yeah, but there were a few people in the Eastern Kingdom you could have met who were a little bit less trustworthy, more backstabby, and you generally just bypassed all of them. And most of that was informed decisions like, I don't know if we want to interact with these people. Like, I don't know if we can really trust these people. And so you managed to fairly deftly avoid the ones that were the least trustworthy. There's still a few that are in there that might backstab you eventually, but most of the ones you found are... You managed to ally yourself with most of the good ones.
Yeah.
Now, the last thing of note is after all of this happened, as the party was leaving, the demon actually told them that, he said, if you seek the means to hold back basically the Deepwood, search southwest of Ajendel for essentially a grove of trees untouched by any corruption that has basically when you step in, it will be completely silent. No sounds will be heard except your own voices. And that is apparently a doorway to what he referred to as a maze of infinite complexity that can only be traversed by someone who knows how to walk the paths between planes. And you know who that is?
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. Oi.
Well, I mean, you at least you have a person who can do it.
Yeah, I'm not saying anything against that. It's just when you start dealing with planeswalking, it's things get messy quickly.
Yeah, but that ties back to the original vision, which is that Estiva received that apparently Trust the Demon had something to do with holding back the Deepwood. And he said, if you want to hold back the Deepwood, go there. If you find your way through and you make it back alive, come back and talk to me.
Yeah.
So. Oh, there's suddenly a cat there. Yeah, and that was basically the end wrap-up. After that, the parties decided they're going to go to the Elflands, and they're going to start seeking out... Well, they're going to talk to some political people, but they're going to... That's a lot of treats. Oh, wait, that's right.
The treats that are more healthy.
That's right.
Because they're cat food.
It's technically not actually treats. It's actually just
A
better-
different brand of cat food.
better tasting nom-noms. I love the fact that he's not taking these away, because he doesn't want to just take like one at a time. He's just eating them all.
And these are the ones that are good for his hair balls. You're not done, son. There's still a lot. Oh, you're stealing one of my kneecaps.
1 second. I might need to help the cat find some of this food. Oh, did you get it? Yep, you got that one.
There's more. Just let him root
There's,
around.
there's one more. I don't see any more. Is there any more?
Just
Looks
read
like-
all the rest.
Of course he did. He's Twizzle.
He may keep sniffing and licking the
So yeah, it was funny, and it's worth noting on the last thing, and I said this several times. Proto's player, because we had gone through several sessions without combat, said, the one thing I want is combat in the next session. Like he said that last session. He's like, I want to get into another fight. We haven't had a fight in a while. I'm like, okay, we'll have a fight. And I planned out so much combat for the session. And then it's like, you guys talked your way out of it. You specifically talked down his men. Using every resource you had, everyone was rolling diplomacy to assist. Clarin pulled a religious card and said, God told me not to hurt this thing. Which, turned one of the guys to your side. And it's like, now, that being said... What?
Technically.
Technically, yeah.
Well, yeah. Sorry,
So-
stretching.
The kitten's being cute.
No, you're good.
Just him picking it up and leaving.
Or he just went like, and then jumped off.
Yeah, he's very delicate with his treat pickups. But it was one of the good treats. He couldn't let Twizzler have that.
Yeah, that's fair. But it was good in the end because the session was going pretty late, and I was like, if we do combat, we're gonna be up like past midnight, and you and I were up past midnight. When we hung around a little bit later and talked some more, so we got back later than we could have. But
We got to the apartment at like midnight.
it was like 11:30.
I saw midnight on the clock when I got in.
Oh, sorry. We shouldn't have stuck around talking as much as we did, but no, with the combat, it's like this combat's going to take way too long. There's too many people involved, or too many NPCs and players involved. It's just going to be really bogged down. And since you guys did give me the opportunity, I was like, for the sake of my wife, because I knew she had to be up early in the morning. I knew different people. You got a work schedule; it's different. Clarin, he works nights, and there's a few others. There's multiple people who weren't necessarily going to be as troubled by it, but for my wife's sake, I was like, I need to wrap up a little earlier. Sorry we stayed so late, but I'm glad we didn't stay as late as we could have.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
if combat gets initiated after 9, that's the start of next session.
Yeah, going forward, it probably will be. This next session, I'm going to plan for the combat earlier. Just resolve things through violence and then talk about it later.
But we're so good at
Violence, yay.
talking. Even your rogue's a talker.
What do you mean, even the rogue? Rogues are usually talkers.
When I play them.
Even your rogue is a talker, is what you're saying. Not even the rogue of the party, because rogues are often talkers.
I'm usually a sasser.
That's true.
So I was pretty sassy this session.
You were sassy toward the demon.
Yeah. If I don't like someone, I sass them.
Yeah,
That's why I sass the Watcher so much.
that's fair. Oh, and you guys have frustrated the Watcher a ton. Because apparently there's certain things that he can't predict. He can't, foretell the actions of. And Claren's deity is one of them. So he's like, did you know about this? No, I didn't. I can't know because you're following the directions of your deity. And that's completely screwing up all my visions. I can't see your future right now.
And then there's the other half
So
of
he-
it, which is...
He's a little
I also
salty.
can't see in the deep wood. So maybe finish dealing with that before you want your future told.
Well, this wasn't Deepwood related specific,
no,
but
before, when I last asked him the questions.
yeah. You're asking, what about this Deepwood stuff? I don't know. I can't see that either.
Yeah, it's like, what kind of Watcher are you? You can't see anything, apparently.
No, you just happen to be involved in the exact 10%. He can see 90% of stuff, and you guys are just running around in the 10%. Which makes my life easy, because I don't have to make predictions for you all the time. Because obviously, it's difficult playing a character who knows more than I do. Because my character knows the future, I do not. So I'm finding ways to justify him not being able to see the future when I really don't know what's going to be next. I'm making an art out of it at this point.
He's one streets, but he's grumpy from the hugs.
Oh, kittens. Kitten. All right, so yeah, so you guys managed to avoid a fight that I thought was inevitable. And to save a person that I thought nobody even liked. Which presumably you still don't like him, but... So now going forward, we're going to have an interesting time with the next one. Next time you're going after the Black Iris, and Proto wants to recruit them.
Fair, I thought about it too.
Did you think about it, Erlon? Did you think about recruiting the Black Iris? Because apparently multiple people from the party came up with the idea.
I've been on the fence about them since the entire time, so I kind of washed my hands from it. It's like, you know what? I'll just follow what everyone else is doing about it, unless I see something that really impacts that one way or the other.
Fair enough. But apparently Proto and Estiva both had thoughts to try to recruit them, and you were indifferent about them. So, yeah, this is going to be an interesting session. And since Proto told me his scheme, he plans to use his hero point to max out his diplomacy role in terms of recruiting them. I basically have to put the combat before the conversation, because otherwise there won't be a combat.
Not if it's conversation based.
I mean, if you can persuade them to join you or to help you with your mission, then why would they attack you? It doesn't make sense. So
We could just fight something with them.
I had that plan with the demon. That didn't work either. I gave you two groups to fight. A group A, group B. You said neither. We're going to make peace with both sides.
I would just like to point out that sometime in the beginning of the sessions, when you were kind of laying out what you think is going to happen today, or that day rather, I said, for all you know, we're going to choose option B. Something else. Or sorry, option C. Something else.
Yeah, at the start, I said, oh, there's going to be a fight, one way or the other. Now, I didn't want to tell you guys that you could potentially side with the demon, and that I was expecting that, because I didn't want to give spoilers. I was expecting, like, you were like, I don't know if we want to fight the demon. And my thought was, I'm not planning for you to fight it. I'm planning for you to protect it, in a weird twist of logic. But, yeah, you guys did pick option C. So... But yeah, so this next session, I'm going to do my absolute darndest to get the combat in early so that Proto gets the fight he wants, as well as to justify having a fight when he plans to just hero point it out. Oh, by the way, this is for both of you. I'm going to tell everyone else later. There have been a number of things I've realized where I've been so caught up in the sessions themselves that's like forest for the trees. There are several times when people should have gotten hero points for various things. Sometimes it's more general, like just overall good role playing, and other time, like not necessarily one specific scene, but just consistently good. Several of you, you're probably one of my top three. You, Proto, and Estiva are the three main role players. Like you kind of deserve an extra point. Hazel and Claren ruined my plans by saving the shaman. Claren ruined my plans again. Dorian blew up the portal. Andalus, it was like, honestly, when I think about it, pretty much everyone should have an extra hero point. So I'm planning to next session just be like, okay, let's consolidate the records and make sure everyone's up to date on whatever the most up to date numbers are. But then after that, say, okay, now take whatever the numbers we end up with, add +1 to that. Just whatever it ends up being. He's looking where the treats used to be.
Yeah.
So you guys will be getting, I don't remember what you were at. Actually, hold on, I can pull it up because I was looking at it. Erlon, you have you had one hero point left, I believe.
I still had the did I have?
No, you had spent one or two.
I spent one, but did I get that one back? Is what I'm thinking.
He spent the most, but he's also gained the most.
Yeah, you've gained here. You gained like, I feel like you've used 2. Yeah, I know you gained.
Used the one. I only used the one for an attack.
Well, you did one thing which was a big achievement. I don't remember what it was early on, and then you completed your family arc, which I gave you another one for. So you should have been at 3, and it says you're at 1. So I think you used 2 of them.
I only used the one against the attack. I don't know. I never used another one.
Maybe I only gave you the one then. But at any rate, between everything,
Did you-
everyone should have an extra one.
Did
So
you just forget the? Did you just forget the market? You said you put in the things like, oh, I gained one from it, but did you actually add it to the tally?
as far as I know, I did. Like I said, I'm gonna double check with everyone, see what everyone's numbers are, and we can figure out what the deal was. It'll be easier with everyone there, because maybe if you and I can't remember, somebody else can remember instead. But I'm going to be adding an extra point for basically everyone, because currently 2 people don't have any hero points, and that's Estiva and Dorian. And I feel kind of bad about that, because they've both been doing some fairly awesome stuff. So yeah, everyone's going to be getting an extra point, and I expect that soon. Well, so the thing is, I'm probably going to do what Protoss player does in the Star Wars campaign, and that is he gives us a cap on Destiny points, which are basically hero points, just Star Wars version. And he gives us a cap of 3. So, like, once you hit 3, I can't give you any more until you use some of these. So I'm expecting Claren and Hazel, because they're both going to hit the 3 cap when I do this. I expect them. Yeah, except you don't have to use them just to max out one roll. You can use them.
You're using a lot of the same rolls that
You know why? Because it's easy and lazy. I don't have to think of new rules. Plus, he's got a good point. I don't want people piling. I don't want, like, Hazel and Claren to both end up with 6 or 7 hero points at the last session and just start, okay, hero point, hero point, hero point, hero point. Of course, with those 2 specifically, it would make perfect sense that they would be like that in the final session, but I can't, for balance reasons, I can't do that. So yeah, you will be getting one. Don't change anything on your sheet right now. I will be doing it during the session officially.
No
But
worries.
just know, well, I'm just letting you know so that we can make sure all the numbers match up. But yeah, I will be updating everyone. Everyone's going to be getting an extra point. That way you can start doing super cool stuff going forward. Heck, maybe somebody can use that during the upcoming combat. We'll see. I'll try to make Hazel have to use one. Honey, something's about to get knocked over, I think. He looked like he was about to headbutt that.
Oh, he wanted to get treats.
Well, he still wants to, and he's gonna be spending.
Scooched away.
He's gonna be spending the rest of the nights figuring out ways to try to get those treats. Because once he sets his mind to treats, he can't think of anything else.
You might go yell about it.
Anyway, so with that, actually, hold on. Nope, I'm gonna do it this way. Cut the music. So with that, it is about the 2-hour mark. We need to wrap this up. Do you have any thoughts, in your opinion? Like, what was the most interesting part of the session in your mind?
Just actually the conversation with the demon overall.
Was there anything that you were less like super surprised by, or was it just more of a general vibe throughout the whole thing?
Yeah, just the general vibe throughout the whole thing.
I know my wife, was not surprised by that big reveal that the gods used to be mortals, because I kind of revealed that to her before I had her play the one deity in the previous scene, Serene, because she needed to kind of understand the mindset and the background of her own character.
Yeah, most of the session I was just trying to
Figure out when my character figured out what I already know.
That's fair. Hopefully there won't be as much of that in the future.
Why?
You keep ending up in that situation where you know more than your character and you have to pretend you don't.
Oh no, I live with the GM.
It's fine, hun. It's just
Well, one,
just a thing
she's
that
like,
I had to do.
I did find a good opening, which is why I then went, what did the Agathian do to you? Because I was like, wait, he definitely has a grudge specifically against the Agathian.
Or Gathians, plural.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, there are moments like that one where I wish that this campaign, and for future, and someday I want to do a campaign where it is actually online, because there are those moments when the roleplay gets really, really intense, and I'm like, this is awesome. I totally wish we could have this on video, post this on the internet. But someday. Alrighty then. So yes, that's the most recent update. Next session, party's going to go to Elven Lands, talk more to people about the treaty, and try to recruit the Black Iris. And I'm sure that's going to go perfectly well with no combat whatsoever. That's basically it. Sorry that there wasn't. I was actually thinking there'd be more conversation, but I guess we already conversed a lot and kind of talked back and forth about stuff after the session was already over. It is worth noting, as one final extra note, when it was all said and done, Erlon went and he spoke to that swordsman and had a, not a super long, but a decently long conversation about kind of their philosophies as swordsmen and their also some of their religious views about stuff, because Erlon's kind of in a weird, he was in a weird mental space where he's like, I don't really know why I'm here, I think it was. Like, what is my purpose for being here?
I've asked that same question to a multitude of people by now. It's like the third time I've asked that question.
Erlon is
it figures out... go ahead.
Well, no, you say your thought first, because I'm curious, because he is your character.
Well, the thing is the only thing I was saying is, like, it figures that the answer that I would get that actually was satisfying was from another swordsman. Because I've asked the Watcher, I believe I asked a Holy Man, and now it was through the talk with another swordsman that I actually get a somewhat satisfying answer.
Yeah, it's interesting because you've basically gotten two complete opposite answers, kind of explaining your presence in all of this. One is that, like, essentially that your route, the course you're taking is fixed, and you never really had the option to deviate because of stuff with your mentor, your father, and your life was you were set on course regardless of your own decisions. Whereas other people have said, actually, the reason you're here is because you chose to be here, so it's entirely your decision, and you're more free to decide than anyone else. And it's not the same. Like, different people have very different perspectives. To some of them, it seems like it was an inevitability that you would get here. To others, it's more.
Well, consider the fact that this is the only reality that I was involved with everyone from the beginning. At least that we know of so far, outside of the one that failed. But then again, can you really count that one?
Well, spoiler, not spoiler. That one... Well, actually, no, that's not even a spoiler. That one splintered off when the portal exploded. So, like, in the original one, Estiva never got a vision. You guys knew nothing about Agathians. You had no reason to potentially trust the demon. You potentially wouldn't have found the information that he gave you about that grove in the southwest. And whatever that leads you to, once you go to that grove, anything that does to impact your journey was completely missing from the other timeline. So that was where it splintered. So actually, that timeline that you've experienced and the one that Estiva saw, it broke off like a week ago, game-wise, game timeline.
So we very nearly missed death.
I mean...
No, it had to have broken off somewhere before that because I had different colored hair.
Which you?
Just saying, like...
One of you had the same color hair.
The way you described the secondary half of the vision, aka when I walked into the basement, what happened? It seemed as if I was part of the me that was me talking to me.
You saw through the eyes of... So, the first time you saw it, there was two versions of you, one over each shoulder. Mm-hmm. Red hair, blue hair. Mm-hmm. When you saw it the second time, you were seeing it through the eyes of blue-haired you, which is the you that looks identical to you.
Which made it seem like it was
time travel wibbly wobbliness.
Well, you were seeing it through the other U's eyes.
So, I'm just saying, like, at some point, there's two of me, and one of me got a dye job.
And a lot of assassin weapons and scars to go with it.
Just saying, like, something definitely different happened more than just a week ago.
How do you know that's in the past and not the future?
Eventful week.
Oh, I'm gonna enjoy so much messing with you with that the redheaded you. Which, as I am sure you are aware, is by no means just some kind of random side thing. That is actually a very important story thread for Estiva.
What circumstances would your character dye their hair?
What circumstances would your character dye their hair?
Need different hair for a job. Going underground. Feeling vibey.
So, basically, concealing your identity or feeling vibey. Those are essentially the two reasons. Kitten's back.
I mean, there could be a different reason I need it for a job than just concealing my identity, though it is the most prevalent one. Okay,
Well, considering how often that's kind of stuff happens, I can kind of see that.
oh wait, you don't want your tummy patted? Since when do you
What
not
just
want
fell?
your tummy patted? I think my stars.
Not the stars, but the paper that makes them in the jar.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm
there's stars
using
in
my
the jar.
ridiculous jump ability to get to places I really
Also,
shouldn't be, and
he
I'm
didn't
starting to
want
get in
his
trouble
tummy
for.
patted, hun.
Wait, what's going on?
I got Boulder's Gate running in the background.
Oh gosh. You know, did you ever try the barrel thing that Matt Mercer did?
No.
So apparently there's a city that you're not supposed to be able to get into except you have without going through the gates and staying stopped by the guards, and there's this whole scene. And so he apparently did, like, he stacked just like this tower of barrels up by the outer wall, and then just like, so there's some kind of teleport jump onto the outer wall and snuck into the city that way. Because there's like no way to sneak in normally because the walls, there's no passage in. So he just made a tower of barrels and teleported over, and they let him do it. And it's like, who accounts for that in a video game? But yeah,
To be fair, in what?
Are you a monk? Are you a monk, Phoenix?
No.
Then how do you have an insane jump ability?
Because that's just how I built the character. With athlete and a higher strength, you can have a really good jump.
Okay.
Not to mention also boots that give me even more jump.
Oh gosh, jump boots. Yes, sorry.
In Breath of the Wild, the Goron city, you can go around to the back and climb straight into what's her face's room. It's just that the guards have supernatural vision and can see across the city.
Yeah.
That's how they account for it in a video game.
In other words, you still can't do this. Also, how did you do that? Okay. Well, so yes, we're actually 20 minutes past end time, which I expected, by the way, which is why I said it for now and not closer to the actual time I need to be gone. So, that's it. We will probably do another breakdown. Hopefully next session there'll be more interesting things to talk about with the Black Iris.
Yeah, there wasn't really a lot of this was just exposition and then my thoughts on certain things. That's why another reason why I haven't really talked much, because there's not a lot for me to add. Because Erlon himself didn't have a lot to add.
Yeah, it was unfortunate, but this was more of a Claren and a Estiva focused session. Next one's going to be Hazel and whoever involves themselves. I guess Proto, because he's doing the politics, but he's always doing the politicking.
I protect Hazel.
Yeah, you'll be
Need
involved.
it, but I protect Hazel. Hey, could you?
Anyway, so that's it for me. I do need to get out of here. Thank you everyone for watching, listening. If you are watching on the YouTubes, that is after the fact. Obviously not watching live because I would have already known. If you are watching this after the fact on the YouTubes, please What? Okay, what is it?
Comment what you like about our kittens.
They're kittens. Everything about them is likable.
Yeah, but they've been on screen a lot more today because of treats.
It's true.
You want to get your face in there?
Yeah, like, subscribe, comment, all that happy fun stuff. But above and beyond. I'm running out of words. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Above all else, if you
I'm just trying to
can,
stay away.
subscribe and share this with other people so we can get more people hearing us and watching us and supporting us, hopefully, going forward.
Even if it's just a handful.
Yes. I am going to be... I was trying to do it this last week. I keep saying I'm going to do it. It'll happen eventually. I don't know when. I'm going to try to get that first video out regarding the Final Fantasy VIII rewrite and the other stuff. It'll happen one of these days. Not tonight because I can't work on the video. I need to...
I mean, I don't know much about it, but I could be there to help play off of, I guess.
Well, I'm just going
to... is that I don't know very well at all.
No, I'm going to be doing it as a solo video. It's not going to be a live stream. I was planning to work on it. My problem in the past is what you speak. So
yeah, I thought I heard you say something about doing a stream for it. Sorry.
No, I'll be doing an actual YouTube episode for it. I've been trying to do stuff in the mornings before I start streaming. The problem is I am not a morning person. It takes me a while to get moving, but I am a night person and I have a lot of ideas at night. So my goal is, and this last week I was doing last minute stuff for the Pathfinder game. So there were several nights I was like, I want to work on that video, but I gotta finish writing my Pathfinder because it took me a while to build up those characters, which I'm probably going to reuse most of those builds, most of the characters I made for that because I didn't get to use them. Which, spoilers, I kind of told you guys what the builds were like. But I can still reuse them and actually see how you guys handle them. I can reuse most of those, so it's not too much of a problem. I won't be able to reuse the demon, but that's neither here nor there. He was going to be a side character anyway. But this next week, I should have enough freedom that I don't need to rush things. Oh, I need to talk to you about scheduling for the Star Wars game, by the way.
Okay.
Protoss player, he asked us if certain dates were available. I need to check with you next week.
Posted.
Oh, okay. So...
Oh, that was a question, but okay.
No, he texted me directly. So, I should be able to actually do work. Whether or not I will is up in the air. It's one of those things I imagine once I make my first video or two, it'll be a lot easier, but I'm super nervous and anxious, and I keep procrastinating. But eventually I will be getting YouTube videos up, and we can watch those, or you guys can watch those, and hear more of my crazy theories on storytelling. At any rate, thank you all for watching, looking,
Have
chatting.
a good night, everyone.
Yes, have a good night. Love you all. Good night. God bless. And we will see you next time. I thought I had the button. I swear I thought I had the button. We could just end it smoothly. Okay, here we go. Bye.